Okay. See if that works. Yeah. Alright, now we'll see if this actually works. Like, if the internet holds up and all that. So if anybody's already here in the first couple seconds, the show that I'm going to do now is called the Postmortem, and it's a show where I look at viewer games. So if you have a game that you've played anywhere that you'd like some feedback on, now's your chance to speak up. Give me the game, and I'd be happy to look at it. Yeah. Good morning, Helgilde. I feel like I should learn how to say good morning in Norwegian just for you. After all this time. It looks very easy according to this translator. God morgen. Is that it? God morgen. God morgen. I'm a bit closer to Japan now, yeah. 3 hours closer. Good morgen. Good dagenly. Good kveld. Alright. Good morgen, Helgilde. That's exactly the word for morning in German, so that's very easy. Oh, silent D, that'll change it. Go morgen. Anybody have a game with any burning questions?
God morgen.
That doesn't sound right. Hey, Heim. How's it going? I was right also. It sounded very weird, that voice. Good morning. It was so long and weird. Alright, nobody's got a game? I'll look at one of my own games if you guys don't have any. I've got lots of games to study right now. Oh, just moan. Good morning. Good morning. Here's the first game for us. Cool. I'd be happy to see your game with Sprolka. Pure symmetry. And of course, you had a chance to win the game. You're up a pawn for nothing. Well, he probably thought he was losing until you played Queen E3. Then here he probably thought he was going to beat you. Because you played so many bad moves. I don't know about over pushing, but in this endgame, once you've lost a pawn, you're not pushing, right? The position's like about equal. And then, yeah, here you're the one taking risks in this endgame. You can tell when he defends his pawn, it means he's trying to win, right? Because he could just do this. This, 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 this. So he's trying to win. But anyway, this move here, definitely your advantage is gone with this, right? Because see his queen's on a weird, not so good square. I mean, maybe you could have taken back with your pawn and not lost the d4 pawn. What would happen then? Hola, pollo. Me recuerdas. Un poquito. Ahí viste su nombre. Your rooks lost their scope. But this way you don't, like, lose your pawns. Guten Tag and ni hao. I am tired. I am tired. No games in the queue right now, Eric. And for me, Abyssional, it is nighttime right now. Soroka versus Helgilda. Cool. So let me take games from Helgilda and Erikito. That'll give us enough of a queue for my sad, tired self. I'm not sad. I'm just so tired that I said the word sad. Oh, 3 a.m. for you, and that's morning. Okay, well then I guess, well, I don't know. Okay, got a game from Erikito. And I'll try to whisper. Just a fun beatdown. Well, that is a nice contribution, Abyssional. I do like such things. All right, so first of all, like Alan, if we just look at these two moves, like one move loses your extra pawn, the other doesn't. So I suppose you could take back like this and keep playing, and the evaluation is going to have to be somewhat in your favor. You're up a pawn for nothing. It's a little bit weak. I wonder if your opponent could play knight e4 to go after this. You know, whether or not things are in the drawing range for black, because I do feel that queen e3 is wrong. But, you know, how wrong, I don't know. But, like, let's say you played this move. I think white... Sorry. Let's say black defends like this, right? I think you pretty much have to take because your knight's attacked and this pawn's hanging. So, you're here, here. Now this is attacked. The only move that defends it is this one. Takes, because of this. Here. Maybe just check here. Here. Yeah. This looks like a pretty plausible defense, right, Latte? I mean, I suppose white could play rook d1 and then just start rushing that d pawn. And if black spends too much time with their rooks, like trying to collect these pawns, then this could be a problem. But if as black you assume that this pawn's already dead and that white is just trying to jam this pawn, then you might bring your king to be the defender of the pawn and white might have nothing, right? Yeah. So as long as we remember to deal with the one danger with our king, then the rook's activity is eventually going to recoup the pawn that black's down. This position doesn't look very dangerous for black. There may be something else to do from this position. There may be different ways to sack our extra pawn. For example, here, right, with the idea of takes, push, getting connected passers, right, and pushing right on, and like this. This may or may not be anything for white, but it's got an idea to it, right? It leaves something on the board for white to win with. It's hard to assess all the options immediately. What else could white do? Take on c5 won't do anything because black will take the b pawn, and then this one's going nowhere. Push, takes, push. I feel like guessing black's okay, but I guess I don't really know. Maybe again it would be good for black to throw in this check. And then just bring the king towards this pawn. I mean, I don't have enough experience to know which of these positions are dangerous for black or not. But it does feel like a lot of the danger is past, right? I would think you may still have something better you could do here than trading queens. I think several things went badly for you. It's not equalish chess latte. Like, it's different ways for you to try and press, and the question is does black have enough defensive resources or not? Yeah. Also, it's not that black's going to blunder, but I mean, if you put a lot of pressure, even on a grandmaster and a rook and pawn ending, they may make a mistake at some point. And it won't be like, hanging their rook or something like that, but it could cost them the game. It's a question of being able to put, grandmaster level pressure on them. That's really the question. So I have no idea, Legyon. I'm on an island here. I don't know what's going on. I am going to host the Gauntlet on Saturday, but I'm not committed to too many other things right now. And I've got like a couple Chess Kid shows that I signed up for a long time ago that I think are still, that I'm still going to do some coverage. So. Yeah, because the thing is, like, grandmasters don't blunder if you put no pressure on them. Grandmasters, like, make mistakes if you put a lot of pressure on them, right? So there's no point saying, like, well, against the computer, the position's a draw. There's no point saying that. We still want to say, in a position like this one here, we want to ask ourselves, like, what puts the most pressure on the opponent? I mean, Chess Latte, you've seen some of the games between myself and Kostya, right, on Endgame Sensei, and those positions are not necessarily, like, winning always, but if one of us plays a lot of good moves, the other person will make mistakes sometimes, right? I mean, we had a rook and 2 pawns against rook and 2 pawns once that was decisive, that obviously should be a draw. So that can happen. And I know Jesse's the sensei of that show, so he's another level up, but like it happens to him too, that he makes mistakes in the endgame. If his opponent plays really well, if something puts, real pressure on him. So no, I have not seen the sub-battle chess numbers. I haven't been on my computer. It's not just that I haven't been streaming. The reason I haven't been streaming is I haven't been on my computer. So I think Chess Latte, I mean, obviously you want to not hang your pawn, right? And already here, it's a question whether or not Jesse's going to play knight e4. Maybe there's some other move that's a good defense too, but it's like every move that your opponent has to make a decision, right? Every decision your opponent has to make uses up some of their reserves. Like when a player's at the board, right, playing a game, they've got their chess knowledge, their intuition, their time management skills, their calculation skills, their fortitude, their emotional and psychological reserves to like deal with like a disappointment or something good happening. They've got all of these things, and they may be in like big supply, and they may be really strong, and against a weak opponent, none of those things get depleted. But mistakes come because strong players slowly deplete each other. And if you look at a match like Carlsen versus Caruana of like 12 draws in a row, to a 1,000 rated player, that match is kind of like boring because it's just draw, 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 draw. With players at that level, sometimes the like depleting the opponent enough to get a mistake out of them might take more than one game. You might have to put pressure on somebody for 500 moves instead of for 5 moves or 50 moves before you get a real mistake out of them. So there's definitely something to be said for trying to find the best moves in a position that's ultimately going to be drawn if it were best play. Yeah, so I think knight e4 looks like a good decision, but, it's hard to say. And then, here there's more decisions. And if you play b4, black has to choose between this or this. just the more decisions you make your opponent play, the more tired they get, and the more chances they have to make mistakes. I mean, your best option is for your opponent to have kids, because then all their reserves will be pre-depleted before your game, and then you don't have to put much pressure on them at all to get mistakes out of them. Jesse's got kids, so you had a chance to get a mistake out of him, Chess Latte. Okay, but I would say, like, there are a few moves here that may have, like, dropped a little bit of your advantage. So let's go through a few of them. So I don't like that black's pawn gets to a4. This should be an isolated pawn. When it gets to a4, then your b pawn becomes a backward pawn, and you end up playing b3 at some point and trade your opponent's bad a pawn. If you want to, like, really, really win a game like this, you're hoping that you'll be up a pawn and one of these pawns will be weak as well. So the kind of moves that you're looking at here are blockading moves like queen a6 or bishop a6 to hold that pawn, or b4, kind of a clamping move, stopping this and creating good shape for yourself on this file, right? Because now it's not a backward pawn in that file. Your opponent will definitely go for a pawn trade here with a5. Or, I mean, not definitely, but that's, like, the main thing to look at. You can also look at, some more complicated moves, but I think rook e7 fails straight up to bishop takes knight, right? And then these pieces are hanging on this diagonal. So, I mean, we could play moves that aren't just about this, like, pawn structure on the queen side. There are other possibly tactics going on. But most likely, our move is going to be something involving the queen and the file and the pawn. Is white's queen in danger? Not so much. This rook is defending this pawn, and if this rook comes over, the queen could go to a6, which we're already considering just playing queen a6 straight away here. You could also play bishop a6, blockading the pawn and threatening queen takes rook, right? That might not be a move your opponent wants to see. Oh, if black let you do this, that's beyond an option. That's winning for white. So black would have to play rook c7 here, I guess, or maybe this, if the bishop here changes the tactics around queen here. This rook's defending that. That's why it can't take on b2. That's also why it can't go to b6. So this is going to be winning for white. It's bishop a6. There's going to be this move, this move. Winning for white. Just Latte, I don't know what Jesse's going to play if you play this move, actually. Once we considered it, it looks pretty overwhelming. I don't really see anything for black to do in response to this. But let me now try really hard to find a move for black, okay? Queen b8 from Sokolov, there's still queen c8, right? We put ourselves in black shoes. We fight hard against this. What option do we have left? Knight b6? Yeah, queen c7, technically possible to avoid losing any more material, but very, very unpleasant position for black after rook e7 and rook e1. The queen's not even threatening to trade, right? Because the bishop takes b7. So white just kind of starts to take over. Not to mention, I mean, b4 is a useful move. You could trade queens and play b4. It's winning for white. What else do we have? Bishop f3, knight f3. How does that help black? There's no knight e4 because the knight on d7's Under attack. This is hanging. It's got to do something about this. This was winning chess latte. So this is one missed win. I mean, we came up with this move to stop the A pawn and create good shape for you on the queen side with your majority. Right? We'd like to have this pawn not be traded off. We'd like to have it be strong. We'd like these two pawns of blacks to be weak. To make sure we can win that endgame. But it turns out bishop a6 does more than that. It threatens queen c8, and shockingly, black's pieces are too awkward to deal with that because this rook has to keep defending this rook and this pawn, and there's just nothing to do. We're attacking a piece that was already heavily committed. That's the thing, right? It's almost like chess latte like remove the defender tactics, right? Or overworked piece tactics, right? This rook is already like the overworked defender. It's defending two different things. So when we attack it, black's position collapses. So that's one knockout move, right? Which kind of refutes Jesse's whole idea of bishop f4, right? Looks like he just hung that pawn. What option did he have once he hung that pawn? If he goes rook b8, you play queen c6, right? And there's no b2 because of this. And if he brings the other rook here, you play rook takes rook check, right? I think that's why he didn't play rook b8. And this knight's defending this knight, and rook comes here, then, you know, you take a second pawn. And oh, no, wait, hang on. Uh-oh, wait. Let's be careful. Rook e8. So queen c6 is going to be a mistake that's going to lose. Let's think. This is a tricky situation. For a moment here. Maybe queen c6 first. If this move, you have takes, and there's no time for bishop f3 because this is back rank mate. Black could trade themselves, but now at least you got the e file. Black can go aggressive right here. I don't believe you've got a back rank mate trick here. Salut l'Astrolin. Yeah, we have to go back and look at that knight b6 move that I mentioned and then didn't look at. Thanks, Sokolov. We'll do that. Nope. Chess latte, this knight will block the back rank mate, I think, right? Well, rook e8's like sacking a piece now. Guillaume, c'est pas ton prénom, c'est ton nom de famille? All the tactics you all are suggesting don't work. You should double check them. Ok, enchanté Guillaume. Ouais, comme Guillaume le Conquérant. Je connais le nom. Well, thank you, Samuel. Thank you. Exactly, L'Astronaut. You figured it out. So white's up a pawn, and black's back rank is almost a problem, but white needs another good move here because there's actually some threats hanging over these two knights. They're kind of weird frozen, so... If rook e8 check, black can just take it, you guys. That's... It's unrealistic to just throw away your pieces like that. We're only up one pawn. Our chess latte's only up one pawn here. Queen c8, knight f8, rook e8, knight takes rook. Maybe bishop e2. A good working class move. Just defending our knight, which needs to be defended at some point. I don't see anything for white here. Exactly, Bishnell. White just loses. Yeah, chess latte, that line is a problem for sure. Whoa. Kimmy, where'd you find all those people? What? What's going on? What? Who are all those people? Greetings. Welcome, everybody. Okay. So there are a bunch of Japanese viewers. Konbanwa, mina-sama. Mina-san. Welcome to all the raiders. To any of my viewers who don't know Kimmy, she was the ultimate student in the first season of Ultimate Sensei. She's a great chess person, and I noticed once or twice that she was streaming like art or other random things, but she mostly streams chess. Like, I think 90% chess. I think she knows some kind of musical instrument as well. Kimmy, what instrument do you play? Violin and piano. Watashi mo. I mean, me too, Kimmy. Exactly the same. We did all those chess lessons and never realized it. Alrighty. How's this working out for white here? We could try g5. Well, white won one variation. Sokolov plays the keyboard and the video game console. Queen f3 here, white has just back rank mate. This was the idea. Was that I was threatening mate first. I don't know, Crazy Sam. I may have miscalculated. I am reading chat right now. I calculate better when I don't read chat. But the whole idea of this g5 move, which is very complicated, is I'm leaving this piece completely hanging to a trade, but the idea is that now there are back rank mate threats with the pawn on f6. So if black moves the knight, it's just back rank mate. If black takes this, then you go rook e8 check, knight here takes, and it's mate. So black has to get rid of the back rank at this point, right? Which basically means a move like g takes f6, right? And then white has time to take this knight, and you see white is up material after black sacks or doesn't sack, either way. We've got rook e8, queen g4 incoming. It seems like white might be winning. So that's the idea behind g5. I don't know if it works or not. And that's why I didn't, save my hanging piece first and play g5, because then there's no back rank mate. So now it looks like g5 is a clean piece-winning move here, but then black can play knight e4. Since we don't have back rank mates to work with, all we're looking at is winning one piece. Meanwhile, black's looking at winning a piece or a counterattack on f2. I suspected that white wouldn't be able to extricate themselves from knight e4 without losing back a piece that they're trying to win here. So, I mean, there might be some possibility to play like knight takes e4 here. Maybe that could still work out for white. And if pawn takes, you just bring the queen back. You never take this piece, you just defend. And if queen takes, queen d5 defending your knight, which defends f2. But this looks risky. All right. Good night, Kimmy. See you later. So, so that looking somewhat risky, I came up with the idea of playing g5 first. And now if black plays something like knight e4, we take and we're threatening back rank mates, right? So black doesn't have the same kind of threat against our pieces. All because we didn't get rid of their back rank mate for them. So it feels like g5 has a chance of winning the game here, right? Maybe we could pursue this bishop d3 variation with another step. Go knight f8 here. And then on rook e8, then take. But again, the tempi are just there for white now, right? It's kind of a surprise. G5 looks winning. I mean, on G4, I also didn't like fully calculate these moves, which are pretty important. Knight G4, my intention was to leave it there and just, you know, take this and go after back rank mate again. So bishop G4. How about queen D6 and then rook E8? Oh, you mean queen D6 for black to defend this stuff? That line, yeah. But, I mean, this move has to be calculated as well. It could be pretty complicated. And these are hanging if white blocks. Here, if we want to avoid a perpetual. I mean, it's a little bit risky, but we have an extra piece. Instinctively, I don't believe that black's going to have a knockout here, but I didn't calculate it too much. Why am I playing a move like G4? Why isn't there some kind of like safer option? Lestrelin or Guillaume is asking, right? Well, because this bishop's threat is kind of like awkwardly hanging over me, my two knights are frozen. So I feel like I need to get rid of either the rook or the bishop. And it was actually kind of like desperation that made me come up with G4. It was basically a desperate move. G3 might be nice too, yeah. That could be a nice move too. We'd expect either queen h6 or queen b8, right? And then on either move, G4 is going to be better than it was before. I know you didn't even want me to play G4 Lestrelin, but I can't help but noticing, but it's going to be even stronger now, right? Like queen here, G4. If the opponent sacks, the queen can't take on G4 with check. If the opponent retreats, the move G5 is even stronger now, hitting the queen and the knight, right? So that looks winning. And then if queen to B8, again, G4, there's no sack because the queen's not there. And yeah. Now again, this stuff is tricky to choose between. I think this is probably an option to just takes, play G5 here. And then this. Oh, look at that poor queen. She's keeping black from winning a piece on D2 because of rook E8. No, your suggestions are fine, working class hero. And yeah, it's true that if we can't deal with this bishop with one of these G3, G4 ideas, then the next thing to look at might be a move like rook B1. Absolutely, it's possible. Here it looks like it doesn't quite work, right? Takes, and then if knight takes, bishop F3 is not exactly what we wanted, and if bishop takes, bishop F3 is even worse because of queen C1. So here it didn't work, but it was still a good idea. Oh yeah, good point, Chess Latte. And that one line I gave, actually, G5, knight E4, queen D7, knight D2, you don't even have to recapture. You just win with rook E8. So basically, I mean, the knight just can't move here, which means black's down a piece and doesn't actually have a threat. Okay, so I mean, we don't want to spend 500 hours on this one variation latte, but it looks like in this position, queen c6 would be correct, not trading on e8. And then after rook e1, rook e1, rook b2, which is black's main chance to get a pawn back, right? I mean, black could play any number of neutral moves here that leave you with 2 extra pawns, right? But rook b2 is probably the move Jesse would have counted on or you would have been worried about. So if they go for the pawn on b2, then I think g3, and then the queen's only really got like 2 squares, and then g4 is winning for white. Which basically justifies you taking this pawn on b7. It says that Jesse didn't really have any good move here, and against this move, you have bishop a6 winning. So I think we could give bishop f4 a question mark, right? And give queen b7 an exclam, and comment after. I don't see how black actually gets compensation for the pawn here. All right, so we have to go look at knight b6 in this position here. Okay, so here at this move, right? Defending that. All right, so this move is not going to directly lose a bunch more material for black, but I don't think it's going to save them from the evaluation that the position's basically lost. Because now they're not using the b file. The a pawn is safely blockaded. And, you know, white's up a pawn. White's got the e file. Black's pawns are weak. Just looks generally winning for white, right? If a4, maybe black could take it, right? And then after you take the 2 pieces, then also take on b2, maybe. Claw their way back into the game. I think white could afford to really keep control of this position. Like, one option is just b4, clamping the opponent. Another option is queen e7, tempoing the rook and just planning to plop the queen on e5. Another option is g3, which was really good in that other position that we looked at. G3 could be very strong here as well. If queen h6, then you go g4, g5. If g3, queen over here somewhere, then you play rook e7 next. And if they ever trade your queen, you take back with the bishop, so it gets even worse. But they're also, like, all the black pieces are tied in a weird clump here, right? They can't chase your queen out. They can't trade her. They can't, I mean, I'm not sure what black's supposed to do from here. They just look stuck. Whereas white, you know, is going to put this rook on e1 as well. So it feels like black's lost as well. I think this knight b6 move, we can call it, like, tactically, like, good resistance. But a strong player is going to notice that black's stuck and keep them stuck at this point. And my guess is that g3 move is going to be really strong, and white will kind of be winning. All right. So, okay, so Chess Latte, we looked at how much chances black had after you took on b7. Not really any. We found a very strong move for you in bishop a6. Now, we're not going to spend hours analyzing because I don't want to overwhelm you with stuff. But let me just give you a couple points of, like, things that I feel like don't go in your favor, right? Here, that this pawn advances seems not good for you. You're just trying to tuck your queen safely, but you're actually, she's getting kind of like passive. She doesn't do anything on c2, and the opponent's pawn keeps advancing. For knight e5 here, then you gave up your bishop. Yeah. I think even with an outpost on e5, your bishop might still be a better piece than a knight. Here. Is there any way to deal with this? pawn bothering you? No, I think this is just a big deal, Chess Latte. I think a huge percentage of your advantage evaporates with that a5 move. I think a huge part of your advantage evaporates right there. I'm going to just check this weak computer for 1 second. So it says +2 if you play c4, g3, or bishop a6 here. Queen b3, a5. It still thinks your advantage is pretty close to the same if you play the move c4 or g3. And then here it's sort of knight e5, it agrees. Bishop g6. You can trade either way. The engine doesn't care. Yeah, see, this was another big part of the opponent's disadvantage, was the bad queen placement. Everything's still fine. Knight f3 and rook e7 look like your best moves here to me. Oh yeah, and the engine points out that Jesse could do this now. And then the pawn structure is solid and this pawn is bad. That takes out a chunk of your advantage. And then here you trade off the a pawn, and the advantage has decreased a lot. Yeah. So the a pawn advancing wasn't necessarily the end of the world. You still had some options with c4, with knight e5, with rook e7, using the e file. We never found a way to use the e file in this game, right? You notice that? Like, your opponent is going for like counterplay on these two files, and we never come up with anything to do with this file, which is supposed to be important in the exchange French, right? And here would have been one move that maybe did a little something with it, right? Rook here. Making this knight choose its direction, right? Making room for the other rook to come there at some point. Maybe attacking this at some point. It's interesting. Yeah, you didn't really see a way to use it. It's not obvious how to use it, but that's maybe one like example where something could be done with it. Yeah, and this queen d3 move wasn't so useful. I guess you were trying to defend this pawn with your queen. You wanted to get off of this rook. Simpler would be knight f3 to be able to put your knight on d4 if your opponent takes an isolated pawn. And that's such a good square for your knight. You know, you can also do this. And put your knight on this square. It's pretty normal. The queen maneuver here and here was weird, right? Because their queen's really badly placed, and you go and trade it. And your queen's in range of like c4 and knight c5, whereas this knight could really be improved, right? It's been in a bad spot for a while. So if you've got a choice of how you want to defend the d4 square, knight f3 is much more logical than the queen. Much more logical, because which piece wants to like go here? Which piece needs to improve? The knight more than either piece. So yeah, you noticed that you weren't able to do anything with the e file. That was frustrating. There's some way to do something with it, but it's something that, you know, humans may or may not see. It starts with rook e7 here. But definitely as a human, we can understand that this knight, like improving this knight would have been worth more, and you don't want to trade their queen. So here a big part of your advantage has dissipated with the a-pawns being traded. Then another big chunk dissipates with the queens being traded. And the last part with losing the pawn. But by now, even if you play fe3, obviously, like, your advantage is just one backward pawn. It used to be so much more. All right, we're going to clip that, take 1 or 2 notes here. What are some things we learned from this game? Black's loss of the b-pawn should be decisive. g2, g3, kicking the f4 queen is quite strong. Right? Because that queen on f4 was really annoying. So g3 was a strong move in a lot of positions, right? That was interesting. g2, g3, kicking the queen f4 is quite strong. She's really good on that square and doesn't have a good backup. What else? Advancing and trading the a pawn is desirable for black. I don't know if you realized that during your game, but my first intention to blockade that a pawn with bishop a6 turns out to be one of many strong moves, but it's the one that I understand. And I don't know if you realize, but as the a pawn advances and when it trades, that's reducing black's disadvantage, right? Because they're down a pawn, but their other disadvantage was the a7 pawn being a weak isolated pawn. Trading the queen h6 doesn't make sense because she is quite badly placed there. And then the last point I'm going to add on here was that knight d2 needed to be improved. So knight f3 at some point should be considered. For example, it's clearly more useful than queen d3. Okay. So now we've got a game from Eric, and we've got Halgilda had a game for me, I think, with Soroka, but I don't have the link to it. Oh no, there's the link to it. What's happening over here? No. Okay, I got mixed around here. All right, have a good game, Latte and Falk. Okay, cool, Filehecht. If I've got the strength for it, maybe we'll get to your game as well. Here's Soraka. Turn this off. Turn this off. Just seems to be like on everywhere now. Okay, there we go. Halgilda, do you have any particular question about this Soroka game? If you do, let me know what it is. I'm going to start clicking through it to see. Wow. Dramatic. Knight finds a square. That's good. Ooh. Looking to trade off that piece. That would be good for you too. Gonna run to the other side. Oh, back to this side. Maybe you should have kept running to e7 and stuff. Now all your pieces are in good shape. I don't know what their time limit was, Crazy Sam. Gilda would have to tell you. I'm probably full Basilisk chess. I've had like 4 games sent to me that I haven't looked at yet, and probably only seen other 2 of them. Ooh, 91. They call this snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, or maybe snatching a draw from the jaws of victory, depending where it goes from here. Well, now it's a mess. What is going on? Can't this knight come check the king? Okay. I found another way to get there, I guess. Wow. Okay. So what's important about this game? Obviously, you played some good moves as well, Halgilda. But I would say the 2 important lessons for you in this game, one would be not to miscalculate that 91 move, right? Which we can talk about somewhat. And the second one would be not to lock up the board when you've got a space disadvantage. In a position like this, what you want to play is e6, not e5. Your opponent spent time grabbing extra space, which means long term your pieces are going to be bad and you'll slowly get squished. But it means, you know, they haven't finished development as quickly. So the move you want to play is like e6 or b5 or something. And in the opening, you played both the move e5, locking up the center, so their king thanks you for that. And then at some point here, you play the move a5, where like b5 would be your other way to try and open some kind of part of the board. This puts their knight here, and it's awkward to defend this. And now, basically, you've locked up this huge space advantage for white over here. They can prepare at their leisure to eventually attack you on the king side here. You have a massive, massive disadvantage until your opponent traps their knight. And then you played very well, again. But from this position, yeah, you should expect things to go pretty badly here. So let's have a look at the opening. So here, everything's fine so far. A6 is okay. You can also just play e6. Makes a lot of sense. If your opponent takes, you can take with your bishop or your pawn. Maybe even your rook. But, yeah, you get some more space like this. And e6. Okay, the other thing they might play is bishop e2. You take. Now this pawn's hanging, so they take. Right? And now you can play bishop f5 or even just knight e4. But the idea is going to be to play knight e4 and trade a piece while strengthening this. You get a situation like this. Now you've got, you know, some useful space for your pieces. All right. Hi, Angel. And hi, Gropin Ho. If you're asking me if I want to play a 3-minute game, no, I'm busy right now teaching a lesson here. So, Halgilda, do you see how that position might be more desirable for black? That you're bringing out your pieces, you're finding some space for them, some breathing room, solve some of your problems. Yeah, there's still the knight on b8, which is left as a problem, but you've solved, you know, at least 2 of your problems, so that's pretty good. Okay, you played a6, opponent plays a4. I would assume the same move here could be played with e6. Right? Idea to, you know, just trade something and open up these pieces a little bit. Okay, but you play knight bd7, bishop queen here, and now e5. So here again, probably the move would be e6. And it's probably still just fine for black, right? Because your opponent hasn't really improved their development in the last couple moves, right? a4, queen c1, h3. Like, none of this stuff is putting white in a position to prevent e6 or to hurt you when you play e6. So you can still do it. And, you know, before we talked about bishop e2, where the answer would be something like this. Actually, white's made it worse because their queen's not defending e2, right? Now if white castles, they lose a piece and the game. And if white takes and takes, they need to defend this piece to castle, so they're looking at like bishop e3 or something. Yeah. Might be fine, but now you'll solve another problem, right? You'll trade one more of your pieces while they're still getting castled. Another thing white could do is play like bishop d3, defending this pawn. Now leap into action, takes, right? We want to do something here. What should we do next? There are many different points of h3 in different positions of Bishanal. The one you mentioned is only one of them, and it wasn't white's point here. So Algilda, like several things you could do. I mean, you could sack the knight and then play f5 to try and win your piece back and trade something. You could try to play knight e5, just trading one piece, which is normally a great accomplishment for black in this kind of position. Just get one piece off the board at least, but it leaves this piece as a real problem still. I would say we should try and like make the most we can out of this weak e4 pawn here. This is just my instinct. So make the most we can out of this weak e4 pawn, gain space and activity for as many black pieces as we can. Right now, if white takes, then we go here. And the threats to the king on the e-file are annoying enough that we might be able to trade off white's bishop pair even. Also notice this knight now has an extra square available. If white brings the bishop back, then the knight uses that square, threatens e4. White can't hold this position together, actually. It's immediately good for black. So no obvious way for white to handle the e6 move from black. That's just... from looking at your moves, it seems to me like you were trying to play b5. Like, I feel like if your opponent hadn't played a4 here, you might have played b5. Am I reading you wrong? Like, if white played bishop d3, were you planning to play b5? Did you have in mind that you should be fighting against the center, countering it, attacking it? Or was a6 part of some other idea. The idea of a6 should be to play b5, and the broader idea than b5 is your opponent's a little bit behind in development, and your pieces need some breathing room. So you need to play some kind of e6, b5, something like that. Now I don't even know if b5 is that good. If white just ignores it and castles, it looks to me like this is less effective than e6, actually. So actually, I would still prefer just e6 right away here, like I mentioned. But at least a6, b5 would be the right idea. The idea is you need to make space for the black pieces and counter white's center. What you end up doing with the two moves e5 and then a couple moves later a5 is the opposite of what you want to do. Like if I could reach out and play moves for my opponent, if I were white and I could make moves for black, I would make that move for black. E5 and A5 would be my two priority moves as the opponent of black. Okay, you may be saying things in chat, but my chat seems to be disconnected or something, so I can't see whatever you're saying. Sorry. Maybe my whole internet's down. Who knows? Can't seem to load a web page, but my OBS thinks that I'm still doing a show. My Discord says I'm not connected. Let's see what the problem is. Why does OBS think I'm connected to the internet and no other... Oh, that worked. And we're back! We're back, we're back. I think. Okay. Okay, let's see what I missed. From Hugilda. Okay, now I can see all of what Hugilda said, so that's useful. Now I need to implement that chain of thought in my openings. I am correct. Can't e6 be done after b5? It could, yes. Could a lead in development be considered a compensation? Could the lead in development be considered a compensation for having a disadvantage in space? Yes, but you need to aggressively use that time to achieve something, right? Like equaling out space or trading off your bad pieces or creating some kind of an attack, right? So if you look at this position that we're talking about here for black, right? Like black doesn't have much of a lead in development. It's really just that white's lagged in castling. But if you look at black's pieces, like none of them are that well placed. So black's not in a position to do something like aggressive, like an attack or a sack or whatever, right? They have to take advantage of what they have, which is the rook opposite the king and the king needing a little more time to castle. They need to take advantage of that. That's why the move has to be like e6. That's the one place where black can really like successfully harness something to fight back against white here. H3. Yeah. Also, this rook e8 move, if you play e6, it becomes a development move, right? If you don't play e6, it's a lost move. Rook e8 versus f8, right? This is only a developing move if you open the e file. So that's another reason why it's like it's kind of saying e6, or it has to go with e6, right? Because without e6, what is that move? Okay. Then we've got Adam, the Irish guy, finally seeing me on reasonable Irish time. Good to see you too, my man. It's interesting. OBS was the only thing that was working at Bishanal. All my other programs were disconnected from the internet. Okay. So we're now connected to everything in theory. So that's the first lesson from this game, right? Your opponent's invested time and space. You needed to play this e6 and b5 thing. There was a question about, can't you play e6 after playing a6 and b5? You could, right? But did you notice how in this line where I played a6 and b5, how it didn't really do that much? And if we take and take, then this bishop's well placed, and even after e6, you know, we don't achieve any piece trades for black, right? So all of our problem pieces are still kind of problem pieces. White's going to be ahead in development here in a moment. I don't know if queen a4 or queen b3 or queen c2 is better. But let's say I go here. Like, ultimately what I'm doing now for black, with all these moves I've just played for black, and gosh, I don't know if white can play knight d5, knight e4, probably. What I've achieved for black now by playing a6, b5, e6, ed5 is I've spent all the time I had, and maybe even then some. Now white's ahead in development, right? See the connected rooks? See the like pieces still on the back rank? So all I've done is now I've opened up the position for the player who's now ahead in development. So a6, b5 is kind of costly here. That's my takeaway from this. And you may see this differently than me, or see some move for black here. It may depend on calculations, but I'm seeing here as a huge problem for black. Takes with, you know, threats of knight c7 basically. I don't know, takes. Now white's looking at knight to g5. Or knight c7 hitting the rook, and if queen c7, rook e8, bishop f8, queen h6. I just see so many bad things that could happen to black. Here's an example of one of the coolest ones. That's pretty sweet. So that's spending too much time blowing open a position when we don't have that kind of a lead in development for black. So a6 and b5, I feel like they're less consequential because white can kind of avoid them, and they don't make use of the rook e8 move. So if you want to make use of the rook e8 move, and you do want to make use of your own moves, or stop playing the moves that you're not then going to make any use of, this move like takes advantage of the rook. It doesn't spend tons of time. It's only one move of investment. This is two moves by definition. And then even after those two moves, you didn't achieve anything. You felt like you needed a third pawn move, right? So now we're just spending one move. And then like in this kind of a position, it's allowing me to develop my pieces and trade. So here I wasn't really behind in development for black, right? I need like one more move to finish development. So that's much better than that a6, b5 looked like. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody who's wondering or confused about that. Okay, so now let's look at the second important part from Helgilda's perspective, which is why on earth did Helgilda play knight e1? Maybe you're onto something, Lestrola. Maybe you're onto something. So, Helgilda, what's going on for you here when you go for knight e1? Do you think you're winning? Advantage? Trying to win? Is this like the decisive move, or is this just a random move that's not that important? Do you have 6 options to win or only one? How much, like, do you have time on the clock? Are you worried? Are you confident? Tell me something about this situation here. You already know that this move was a blunder. You don't need me to tell you that. But hopefully I can help you to think through what I do, where I try to categorize my mistakes and get some kind of insight into where they're coming from and how to avoid them in the future. I mean, any computer engine could probably tell you this was a blunder, and you could probably tell it without a computer engine because in the game you noticed your knight was trapped, right? So it's like, yeah, knowing it's a blunder is nothing, right? Knowing why you made the blunder is big. Okay, you thought you were winning. You thought you had a tactic on f3. Were you expecting knight e1, queen f2, queen's trade, and then you take on f3? Is that kind of what you like thought would happen here? You thought, like, I'm attacking this. My knight's on this exposed square. He'll try to, like, cut off the defender. I'll trade queens and I'll pocket the pawn. Feels like something you might... Maybe even you would take with the rook, not the knight. I don't know how deeply you calculate, but rook takes... Looks like pretty good technique. Okay, you didn't see the possibility of queen h1? Queen h1 doesn't look any good. You could trade it and take your pawn that you wanted. Okay, you thought you were winning. You were going for a tactic. You didn't see queen h1 in some later line here, 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 here. I don't know where you missed queen h1. Queen e2, rook f3. You had planned queen h1 in this position? Is that what you missed? Yeah, those are the most common first moves, Crazy Sam. They're both fine. There's not one that's better than the other, as far as anybody knows. I'm just waiting for Helgilda to tell us what he overlooked. 2 things were overlooked. One is something to do with queen h1, and one is something else. Either I'm disconnected again or it's taking a while. Oh. Anytime I have to wait for 30 seconds, I'm tempted to take a very, very quick nap. But then I won't know when Helgilda has explained it. I'm going to conclude that I've been disconnected from the chat again. I think that's what's happening here. Oh, and there come 500 messages at once. After rook f3, yeah, you were thinking queen h1 here. Hello, Toto Young. The prime sub from Abyssional seemed to wake up my chat window. Thanks for the Bezos box, Abyssional. That's appreciated. Oh, you had planned in this position here, this. That's what you planned. And why didn't you go for this? Did you play your moves in the wrong order with rook f3 instead of knight f3? Knight f3 looks like a brilliant tactic, actually. Oh, that's what you should have planned. Okay. So you were in a position with the winning tactic, but when you played knight e1 and knight takes f3, it's not that you missed a move from your opponent, you missed some other win for yourself. But what were you trying, what did you expect was happening as you were throwing away your knight? Like, your plan went through. Your plan was to just trade your knight for the pawn. You're telling me you played knight d3 check on purpose and knight e1 on purpose, planning to just throw away the knight? All you wanted was that one pawn? Was white defending with knight f1? So you had planned in this position, you actually wanted this position and you hadn't seen that white could defend, so you were expecting like the king to come up somewhere. But okay, let's say the king comes up somewhere instead of knight d1. You still just threw away your knight for a pawn. What about this position would you want? Nothing. You wanted to trade your knight for a pawn, basically. This was your planned position. Wow. Your plan was to trade your knight for a weak pawn. Not just a pawn, a weak pawn. It's interesting. Okay. Plan was to trade the knight for a weak pawn. And I'm going to put your only advantage, I'm going to put in parentheses, your only advantage in the position was the extra knight versus a weak pawn. Right? So that would be like, my only advantage is I control the open file. I'm going to move my piece off of the open file. Or my only advantage is the bishop pair. I'm going to trade one of my bishops for a knight. You're literally giving away the only thing you have. You felt you have something there. Okay. I think the possibility of knight f3, rook f3, queen h1 is not something we should really focus on. Like, obviously, you've got to position up a piece. You've got a million ways to win. So you missed one of the ways to win. There are like 10 different ways for you to win, right? I think what we want to focus on is like what you were trying to do, not what you missed, right? What you were trying to do was you had an instinct that you could win, and you're looking at just throwing your knight away as a way to win or something, right? I think the problem is the direction of thought, not like the calculation, not whether you missed something or whatever, right? Like, in this position here, what could be like your major thoughts? One might be like, I should try to win one of these two pawns. Another would be, I should try to improve like my pieces, right? It's basically two different approaches to trying to win a position like this if you think that it's advantageous to you, right? Hey, Indo Queen, welcome. Right. A lot of people's first impressions here would be like, let's try and improve this bishop, because right now, if technically you're up a piece, but this piece isn't in the game, then you're not really up a piece. Right? You're just playing like knight, rook, and queen against knight, rook, and queen. And there's no reason to think that you should be able to win anything, right? This knight e1 to f3 is kind of like surprising, honestly, because you don't have the bishop involved in the game. It's not actually screaming at me that you should have a win in this position. I mean, you're winning because you're up a piece, but I mean, you know, like, the position's not screaming at me that you should be looking for a tactic here. You're thinking the bishop is dead, so you should get that one in the game yourself. See, that would be like a totally different approach to the game, right? And it has nothing to do with your calculation ability, right? If you improve the bishop and then you're just up a piece and then there's nothing to calculate, maybe, right? So, okay. Let's look at improving the bishop, right? Bishop c8, knight b5 attacking here. You have to check how that works. What next? So knight b5 looks kind of annoying. You'd probably be counting on this move for black. I'll just speed things up for us. And then the interesting move for white would be queen h2. Now you can't take. Momentarily awkward. You could play knight f4 just defending your bishop, but then why did we bring it there? White plays knight takes d6. So now, you know, you would need a move like this to justify what you've been doing. It threatens the rook, and if queen takes, you have here. White oddly can't defend their king. But what they could do here is defend the d2 square in advance and play like this. And now you have rook f3 defending these. So d6 is hanging, but you've improved all these pieces enough that this probably works out, right? So like knight d6 could maybe be played, and you can calculate, rook f2 or just queen e3. And something's going to be winning for black here, right? Because all these pieces are on good squares. h3, queen e2. Okay, I'll check your move list, Rona. So this could make sense as an approach. But as you can see, it requires a pretty tricky calculation, right? Lestrolin gives this option as well. Queen e4. A beautiful move, right? Here, 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 here. And black has fancily traded into the endgame and should still be good here. Though the variation I gave is better for black than this, right? Here you haven't gained anything. You gave up your d6 pawn for the f3 pawn to get some trades. But there's still some work to be done in this endgame. I mean, it's winning. There's a question about this move. Probably queen e2 is going to win, right? Lestrona. Same as my queen g5 to d2 idea. So I think your move is sound. I just think this move might be even better, actually, right? Just here. And then what did I play here? I played rook d1, rook f3, right? And the black pieces are just doing great now. Now, that requires some calculation of knight b5 or just being confident that things are somehow going to work out for you against knight b5. But if you see knight b5 as a problem, that's annoying, then what you could do is you could take things super, super slow, right? Which is to not play bishop c8 even because of knight b5. To first reposition these pieces, taking advantage of the open file. So you go knight f4. The queen's trying to defend g5. She comes here. Then you play rook h8 for black. And then queen h2. So basically, we're just putting our pieces on dominant positions, right? What it's going to look like at the end is going to be that black's knight and rook are better than white's knight and rook. And then black will take their time to improve the bishop and king. So you're looking at something like, here, some kind of position like this. And white's basically just marking time. Then you bring your king over to e7 to defend this pawn. And then you can improve this bishop, right? And finally, you can attack f3 or g5 at will in a very simple, no counterplay, no chances kind of way. If you play the game this way, there's nothing to calculate. It's not a question of your calculation skills or not, right? It's just, you see that knight b5 is annoying. So first you improve your knight, queen, and rook. You go queen h2. You take away any chances for the opponent. Then you go defend your weakness with your king to free up the bishop, and the bishop can do something better. Eventually coming to g2 or whatever, right? So this is a very simple, no calculation way to play, and it's probably how most people would play this position. They wouldn't start calculating. It's very unusual that you started thinking you've got a way to win. Most people in a position like this, they would say, my advantage is that I'm up a piece. Right now I have a piece that's doing nothing. So I need to get my pieces coordinated, and then my extra piece will win. The thought that you're going to suddenly beat white in this position here when you're not yet up your piece is not going to occur to most people. So, I mean, I would go knight f4, rook h8. I don't think I would calculate bishop c8, knight b5, bishop h3 kind of stuff that we just looked at. I don't think I would calculate that. In a classical game, I guess I would. Another reason why it's not good for me to play blitz, because in blitz I would just play knight f4, rook h8. Then I don't practice actually thinking the way I would in a classical game. You can Shivan, but I'm not going to get to you today. But yes, in general, you can submit a position instead of a game. That's perfectly fine. What's interesting to me about this, Hagilda, is that you're actually right that knight e1, knight f3, queen h1, that black has a tactic in this position. That's what's shocking to me about this position here. Because I would just be playing, you know, like rook h8, queen h2, basically. Just using the open file to trade off the queen and then win simply. It does not look to me like the kind of position where knight e1 is likely to win. And yet it actually does. So you're going to have to compare this with other mistakes you've made in your time and see what it tells you. You know, was it good or bad that your instinct was telling you you had a win here? Like, did it make sense? Did it not make sense? I'm going to give you like in advance some of like the bullet points that I've written down in my document. You can see them here. These kind of categorize this. You just wanted to get white's knight to retreat. I mean, that was like super, super unrealistic, right? The plan to lose your piece on purpose. So you know, do what you will with those notes on your mistake. Try to ask yourself similar questions about other mistakes that you make and see if some patterns kind of emerge as you look at a few of them. And that's what I do with my mistakes. I ask myself, you know, what was the situation, right? Was I trying to win? Was I trying to draw? Did I think I had a good position? Was I intense, or was I relaxed, or was I worried, or whatnot, right? Yeah. Yeah, I'm just giving you some idea on how I do it. Like, I go to my mistake and I try to really characterize the situation in which I made that mistake, and then over time I can compare them and have an idea of, is there some pattern about when I am making such mistakes. Okay. Let's look at Eric's game. Jazz Edits asks about knight f4, knight h3, trying to win this pawn. I suppose you could, Jazz Edits. Again, black's up a piece, so there's multiple ways, and that's probably okay. It's not my instinct to go get like this knight pinned, basically. So if we go knight f4, queen g1, knight h3, queen h2. This is like mildly counter to my instincts to get these pieces tied up, trying to win this pawn. I'm more interested in like getting all my pieces to good squares because I'm up a whole piece. I know that the pawn will eventually drop off with no effort. Look at the effort of calculating this situation here for black right now. What are we looking at? Queen g5 and knight g5, which probably both don't work. Rook h8, rook h1. Does queen f2 work or not? Look at that difficulty level, and then look at let's see, this one here. Rook h8, here, here, here. How hard is it going to be to calculate whether or not rook g2 wins this pawn? And even here I didn't do it, right? I brought the king to e7 and the bishop to c8 first. But like, let's say you tried calculating rook g1 for black here. What's the difficulty level of our calculation there? You see how it's like level 0? Whereas what you were talking about may or may not be something easy for you to calculate. This knight h3, queen h2 situation. Maybe this isn't difficult for you, but I mean, I think we can clearly see that it's not level 0. This is like something to figure out. Okay, let's grab Eric's game. If you're still there, Eric. Should I assess the positions in such a way that I see it? I'm not sure about that question, Hugilda. I'm not sure I understand each of the words in that question there. But I mean, of note to me is like your main advantage in that position was that you were up a piece. You had a bishop on a6, which wasn't in the game, so basically it doesn't really seem like you have much advantage yet until that piece is in the game. It turns out that controlling the h-file would be your second advantage, so rook h8, queen h2 is like a good use of that file. If your opponent still had an extra light squared bishop, that might even still win that game, just for reference, folks. Like this kind of a position here, if white had like a bishop on c2, let's say, so that black's not up a piece, knight f4, this exact way that I show with knight f4, queen g1, rook h8, you can imagine a white light squared bishop on like c2 or d1. Black might win with this exact plan just off of the h-file, right? You go queen h2, you trade off the queen, you bring your rook to the second rank, you can attack the g5 and the f3 pawn, so you've got two weaknesses to attack. The light squared bishops for white and black are both bad and take some time to readjust. This is actually like a legit way to maybe win this game even without being up a piece. So the h-file is a noticeable second advantage, actually. But getting back to this, your advantage seems to be that you're up a piece. Your piece is not yet in the game. You both thought it was the time to win when there's nothing really saying that you should have a win here until that bishop were in the game, right? And your plan for how to win was to trade your knight for the f-pawn, and then maybe queen e1 check would be awkward for white. So you're trying to win when you haven't yet put your advantage into play, and your plan for winning is to give away your entire advantage, right? So at that level, I would say the assessment, it would be useful to you if your assessment were, what's my advantage? It's the extra piece. Like, okay, what's like a logical way to win with like my extra piece, and like when and like how. So you complicate things for yourself, right? You complicate your own thinking, your own positions. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's see Eric's game. Wait, did I clip this for my... No, hang on. I came back here because I need to copy this as well for my file. Yeah, you're welcome, Hugilda. All right, so now we've got Eric's game. All right, So, Eric, do you have any particular questions about this game? Let us know. Hey, Messy Tooth. Holy moly. Maybe, but certainly now that they've castled, it looks like a little bit easier because it's like a sitting duck. But hang on, I'm gonna do my first playthrough. Let me know if you've got any other questions. I guess one question is, could you have punished them even before they castled yet? Maybe. Bishop b1, queen b2, knight g5. Wow, it's gonna be crazy complicated now. Stopping queen g4. Gee. Ah! Oh my good goodness. Stopping rook h3, the only way you could see how. Wow. Trying to play rook e3. He did play rook e3. And here you won on time. In a completely undecided position. White is winning here, no. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you know. I don't know. King d8, queen b7. King d8, queen b7. Yeah, I mean, you can win another pawn here. Cool. Yeah. Is that not mating? Bishop d6, queen d8. Yeah, that's better. I thought I was just playing out Eric's variation from chat. I wasn't looking at it very critically yet. Anyway, I'll say this. This position is completely unclear to me. You know, I mean, rook f5 looks like a mistake because of rook g7 probably, but... I mean, are you threatening anything here? f5, they have rook f5, right? So you're not really threatening anything. It's just a random complicated position, right? Rook, bishop, and knight, and one or two not very good pawns against three really good pawns. Who knows? Who knows? Total mess. Okay. So your first question is, could you punish black before they castled? That's going to be really early. So like around here. Knight, bishop, bishop. And by the way, Eric, even in that position with rook g7 check at the end, black should just move their rook back to f7, right? Trade the rook. Their king won't get mated. You can win a pawn back on d5 or something. But it's still rook, bishop, and knight against your queen and three pawns. So, still not decided, I guess. Okay, but so like here, okay, does white have a way to punish? You went knight h5, attacking probably their most obvious weakness, and they castled. So I don't know how you could punish them before they castle. That looks like the right move. I don't really know what move you could have that's better than knight h5. Your d4 pawn's under some real pressure. And your b2 pawn at the same time. It's not easy to figure out what you can do here, honestly. What do we got here? So at this point, you know, your opponent's opening doesn't look very good. But you didn't make any use of rook c1, actually. Because you didn't play c4 here. Right? Like your rook might as well have just been on a1. It did Far Eastern, exactly. The other move you could play here would be king f1 to defend your d pawn. With this move, now knight f3 is not check. That's like a typical French defense tactic to save this piece. The d4 pawn being more important than the b2 pawn. So your king just gets out of the way of some stuff. You allow queen b2, right? And then you're looking at the same kind of knight h5 stuff. Knight h5 first makes sense. The other question is king f8 holding for black. Doubtful? Well, I guess it depends on our word for holding. It does defend g7 for the moment. You know, white doesn't have like a winning tactic here. Breakthrough? No, you're far from breaking through, Eric. It's the French defense. You can't win very quickly against the French defense. You're still far, far, far from breaking through against a good player. The most I would say is that I kind of like your position. But it feels to me like maybe you overestimated how big an advantage it is. If you were thinking about like breaking through and could you have won faster, like could you have, where did you want to win? Here? Earlier than here? Let's see, your opponent played c6 instead of c5. They've played one bad move so far, right? c6 instead of c5, basically a wasted tempo. And here you played e5, which was also kind of a wasted tempo. So things have kind of equalize a6, not that great. Knight e2, very, very slow tempo-wise. Your opponent doesn't even have to go to c7, he could go to b6. Yeah, I don't know why you would think you're breaking through. Your opponent's not lost much more time than you. They played a sort of pointless a6, and they played c6, c5. You moved the knight from b1 to g3. You played e5 for a tempo. You played c3 for a tempo. So, yeah, you don't really have... You don't have, like, much more than a normal French defense advantage for white, right? Whatever, 0.5 to 0.8 is normal for white in the French defense. There's no reason here to be so excited to think that you were, like, winning or breaking through or should have broken through even earlier. Yeah. You seem to really be, like, hating black's moves without criticizing your own moves. If you looked at your own moves, they're not unimpeachable either, right? Like a tempo on rook c1, many tempos to bring the knight to g3. Yeah. Definitely the opponent played some moves that looked kind of bad, but you didn't fully account for the fact that your moves didn't look that much like better, right? Like, I know you're trying to win, so you're like, oh, I have to do this knight maneuver, I have to do this or that, but I mean, then you also have to be honest with yourself that you haven't really gained time. It just means in a locked position like the French with e5, that moves like c6 and a6 are not like super easy or fast to punish, if at all. And then, you know, I see you spending like a lot of time trying to set up your punishment, but then you've wasted a lot of time on your own moves. Let's see, how many pieces did black play to the queen side? A couple. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely scary when they castle. Right? Once they castle, it's scary. And I thought this move looked really good for you, and you seem to have looked at this yourself as well afterwards and agree with me that this is just winning. I mean, I didn't really calculate it. I just glanced at it and thought, wow, this guy's just asking to lose to bishop h6. More time bringing the knights to where they normally go. The knights have moved 1, 2, 3 times, and normally they move 1, 2, 3 times. So look, you didn't count the knight time correctly. Your opponent didn't spend more time getting the knights to where they normally go. They spent the standard 3 moves to have both knights attacking your center. Playing pieces the queen side in and of itself is not bad. It's only bad when you send your king to the other side of the board without any pieces, right? Until black, you know, sends the king over here, it's probably not so bad. They could play these kind of moves with a king in the center or with a king that castles queenside. Okay. The problem isn't bringing pieces to the queen side. The problem is sending the king to the king side alone. And you'll notice that you have basically a normal position. Well, you didn't notice it at the time, but you may or may not trust me when I tell you that you've got a normal position until the moment your opponent castles king side. And the moment they attack castle king side, you're winning with bishop h6. I mean, we could get computer confirmation or something if you want, but I would say there was nothing wrong with these moves on their own, but these moves with the king going over here is a mistake. Yeah, even just g6 might be better. Bishop f8 looks fine. G6, definitely. G6, why not, right? You're going to f4, hopefully, not g3. Takes. I'll try to take this pawn. I mean, what do you think, like, the computer's going to say if we turn on a computer? That white's got more than compensation for the pawn, but they're not going to say it's lost or anything. White won't be up more than a pawn here. I mean, the engine I have available here on the chess.com server is not like the Oracle of Delphi. But I would say it's something like nothing, castles. Oh my god, white's winning. Okay, that's the only move that doesn't look right, that doesn't fit in with black's other moves. And the only move that makes me feel like white can break through. And notice my breakthrough that I suggest, bishop h6, is like definitely something that would never work with the rook on h8 or with the king not on the king side. It requires both the king on the king side and this rook flipped to that side. Now, that said, your opponent did play a bad move here with c6. And I can tell what happened is your opponent played some bad moves which kind of like waved a red flag in your brain. And you thought like, must destroy, must destroy. The fact is, it's a mostly locked position in the move. And they've wasted one move. And then you spend a tempo on this e5 move. So let's talk about that a little bit more, this e5 move, right? Like basically c6 is going to be worse for your opponent in any d takes e4, knight e4 position. So what are you playing e5 for? Like if you play e5, it's a locked position, so the amount of time lost on c6 becomes less important rather than more. If you recall, in the French, there's only like two moves which are considered good in this position here. Knight f6 and bishop b4. What do those moves have in common? They threaten to take on e4. They fight for control over the e4 square, right? So your opponent plays a move that doesn't fight for the e4 square. Logically, what's bad about it is that white doesn't have to make any decision about the e-pawn yet, because the e-pawn's not threatened. So it really doesn't make sense to spend time moving it forward, right? Then you're in some like advanced French where you decided you didn't like your knight on c3 and spent like 2 more moves getting it to g3 just so you could play c3. Lock the center and attack on the king side. Sure, but what do you think of the advanced French, Eric? What's your opinion on this move? Because right here you chose to play knight c3 over moves like pawn takes pawn, e5, and knight to d2 and bishop d3, right? So hopefully you've got some opinion about this move as a 2,000 rated player who's played a fair number of e4 games. What's your opinion of e5? I'm not asking about the theory. What's your opinion? I mean, you chose, in this game, you chose to defend the pawn. Surely you considered some alternatives, right? You could trade it off. You could advance it. You could defend it. Okay. Tell me why it's valid. What? Tell me more about what you think of e5. Grab space, take some squares away from black pieces, yeah? Spends a tempo, locks the board up so that tempi matter a little bit less. Hurts the c8 bishop. Very good. Very good. Okay. So knight c3, c6. Now with these moves thrown in, e5, right? So you now play the advanced French. Is this an improvement or not compared to playing the advanced French on this move? This is one of the reasons why you have to have an opinion about stuff, even if you don't play it, right? Like, you can't just, like, say, like, I play knight c3 because I always play knight c3, right? We have to have an opinion about knight c3, knight d2, e5, bishop d3, pawn takes pawn. Like, you have to have some kind of idea, because otherwise, how do you compare positions and decide what you think of e5 in any other position, right? Is e5 better or worse now than it was before? I mean, you're the one who didn't seem to like your knight on c3, since the very first move you played after e5 was knight e2. Right? I'm not yet throwing my chess opinions on you. I'm just asking, like, do you have opinions, and are they consistent with what you're doing? If you thought the knight on c3 was misplaced here and needed to be moved again, then that would actually say that even though your opponent's wasted a move with c6, that to now play e5 is actually worse for white than the advanced French, because the knight was better not on c3. Right? You see what I'm wondering about there? I mean, I don't want to put any, like, words or opinions in your mouth, nor just try and overwhelm you with my opinion about which variations of the French are better or worse, because these are tricky things that people have to sort of figure out for themselves. But everybody has to have, like, some ideas about which positions they think are good or bad, so that then when they play their games, they learn something, right? You thought that your opponent's play in this opening was terrible and that you should be, like, winning. And because you had that opinion, you're now able to learn something from this game. You're now able to learn, like, wow, my evaluation was so wrong, right? I can't win this position yet, right? Yeah, g3 is a fine square for it, Henrique. You know, this may have been a good maneuver to g3, who knows, but we're talking about right now is, like, is e5 like a good move, right? If you want to take advantage of this pair of moves that have been thrown in compared to the advanced variation, right, then e5 is not, I mean, e5 goes to a position where the trade of moves is actually not even seemingly something that Eric was happy about. If instead you play bishop d3, d takes e4, knight e4, how do you feel about the inclusion of these moves here, c6, and white's development move? Well, now he would be very, very happy, right? Let's say he plays bishop d3, and black now plays bishop b4. Well, compared to the normal winnower, the fact that black spent a move on c6 means that Eric could push, he could castle, he could play a3, and that's what I would do. I would play a3 now and take my opponent's r-squared bishop when I don't even have to play e5 yet. So now, I mean, their dark squares are just terrible. I'm not even going to play e5 if I can avoid it. I might play bishop f4, right? If black plays knight f6, that might convince me to play e5 because I get two whole tempi. The knight goes back to g8, right? So then I'll have what? Like a 3 tempo up winnower? I could spend those tempi putting the bishop on a3. or doing other things. Or they might take. And now I'm very happy to have open stuff for this guy here, right? My center's still strong. This bishop's still bad. We didn't have to play e5 to make that bishop bad, right? Like, we've now played in a way where black's c6 move has looked just like a lost move. And we've taken advantage of it to take their bishop pair because there wasn't the pressure on e4 that they were expecting. Right? So anyway, if you want to start yeah. If you want to start punishing people, we have to play towards the strengths of our moves and the weaknesses of their moves. So c6, I mean, that makes d takes e4 lines much worse because there's the bishop's already blocked. If they play c6, c5, it's a wasted move. The position's more open, so the wasted move will matter more. So to me, c6 means we're even less worried about d takes e4, which means we have even less reason to ever play e5, because e5 is generally played by white when they're afraid black's going to take on e4. That's generally why you play e5 in the French, in the knight c3 or knight to d2 variations. In the advanced variation, white's playing e5 immediately because they just think this is just amazing, this space that they're grabbing. And they're willing to even waste their time to get it because they think it's so good. But the principle behind like knight c3 and knight d2 variations, both of which have an awkwardness, right? Like knight c3 blocks this pawn from participating in the center and allows bishop b4. And knight d2 blocks the development of this bishop and this queen's influence, right? So each of those moves have an awkwardness. That means each of these moves is really saying, from white's perspective, that they don't really want to play e5. They want to support e4. And in those lines, I mean, the only reason you'll see people playing e5 is, you know, when they feel kind of like forced to. And it's like, okay, black's threatening to win my pawn. I don't like f3. I don't like bishop d3 anymore. So fine, I'll push, at least I win a tempo now. But it's really just because white's exhausted the moves that they wanted to play to keep this here. So here, you know, since we're not fearing d4 at all, the tension is just kind of favoring white, and I would just develop and develop and so forth. Anyway, that's how to think through that part of the opening, I think. And yeah, I mean, keep honest track of how ahead or behind you really are. Now it's just chaos. Just chaos. I don't even know if you're good or bad here. Maybe queen e2 to d3 could be an idea here. Oh, yeah. Eric, queen e2 might be a pretty good move for you here. The knight g5 move, I mean, it's violent, but it's kind of crazy, right? It gives up the center. It blocks your own queen coming to g4, which is your main plan. How about this? So one idea is to play queen d3. And another idea is to play knight g7. Because if king takes, bishop h6 check wins the queen. I guess one big question is what happens if black just takes the pawn, right? Not much else for black to play here. Like, they can't defend the king. They can't defend here and here. They just have to harass white, like, here with their pieces. So let's try this. Maybe bishop b4, knight b4 or something here. My last name at Gmail, Toto. Now, the threat is queen takes c1 probably. A little awkward. So we castle. Takes. Looks like white's position's falling apart. You have compensation, but not more. Well, I can't prove an advantage for you after this move. Here, the move's pretty good. But I'm also tired. Maybe there's something. I mean, it does seem like a nice approach to the position. If knight f4, black takes here, right? I don't know, Eric. Queen e2 doesn't look totally convincing. I'm not convinced by the move you played. Somehow even just the queen on b2 is like annoying enough that this isn't easy. It's harassing the white pieces from behind, making it harder for them to attack on the other side of the board, actually. Okay, so you played knight g5. Black just takes the center pawn. Doesn't try taking the knight. You said your plan was hg5, h4. Good lord. Craziness. Craziness. If gh4, queen g4 is probably sound. If cd4, probably the only thing black can do, cd4, to try and justify this. Might as well play cd4 first. Oh, you didn't recapture it. Took. Huh, I see. A little bit of what's going on here. Okay, so taking this pawn makes sense. Yikes. Take it. Knight g6. Okay, I don't believe this, generally speaking, Eric. It seems like risky. Suspicious. Maybe a little dubious. You could have taken a draw. Right. Right here, yeah, I saw that. Yeah, and there's no defending h6 there, huh? Interesting. Okay. So knight g6 is one move. Taking here is another. Sure. All right. Looks like I'm too tired to calculate these lines, Eric. Thanks for giving me an exciting challenge here, but I'm not up for it today. My instinct is this doesn't work for you. My instinct is black's got some kind of defense. My instinct is, again, to just keep like taking stuff in the center and centralizing. Although I don't see how I defend against taking here at this point. F4 instead of queen h5. Oh, to kick the knight off of this here. I guess this moves to a strain. It's probably what black's doing. Knight d3, bishop d3, queen d3, bishop c3. That doesn't work. That's not what I'm doing. Just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, so knight back here. Well, this blocked the bishop from h6, which is a big piece of what he was up to. So I don't think Eric would be pumped about f4. Wait. Bishop c3 again. Oh my goodness. f4. What a move. So white's already down a piece, right? And this knight might be trapped. So I'll take that pawn so the knight's trapped again. Oh no, my rook. Ah! Jesus. Oh, I'm like brain dead. Okay, let's try this. Check. If queen here, bishop takes bishop wins. That much I can't have wrong here, right? So king here. Now I'll take here. This is defended. This is attacked. I guess this might get taken here. But, I mean, now white's just lost, right? Yeah, that's losing for white. So bishop b4 is, again, going to be a powerful move here. But f4 was tricky. f4 was actually tricky. Okay, so you would probably have played queen h5 here, which I don't think I figured out at all what I would do. Yeah, there's no more moves in the line. I guess I don't know what I would do here. But black's up a piece, and I don't believe it. Try this now. Check here, here. Check here. So this variation here, black's got 2 minor pieces against a rook. Extra B pawn just in case it goes really late. And the nice thing is that this queen is really good, right? So now this rook can't get in, white can't castle. I think white's losing, right? Maybe not by as much as in some other positions. Maybe not super obvious, but just losing. Sorry, Eric. I don't mean to. I'm too tired to explain it. I mean, I'm too tired to like say it in a good way. Rook c3, for example, we always have queen g6. I know when you said it looked fun or exciting, you guys were probably thinking queen b1, like king e2, queen h1, rook g3. That's probably more fun. But just queen g6, and it's like, oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't really see what white's supposed to do. Rook c3 here. This would be like another chance for white to resign. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't believe it, basically, yeah. This one move, queen b2, really disrupts all white's pieces. They all just want to go this way. It really disrupts it. It's not letting me start another analysis board. That's very annoying. I'm trying to start another board to show you another example. Okay, well, I'll just put it in here, maybe. Well, I don't want to like pollute your PGN with it. Okay. Okay, Eric, I once had a I once had a game that went like this, I think. And this position, my opponent played queen b6 and lost really hopelessly. And then when we analyzed it afterwards, we found that queen b2 was much more difficult for white to beat. I guess it's not that good a comparison, but the thing was the queen on b2, even though it's not defending anything here, which is where white's attack seems to be headed, right? Even though the queen's not defending anything in the area white's attacking, by being in and among like the white pieces, she like takes away some of their freedom and some of their options. Whereas when she goes to b6, like she just wasn't doing anything. So the reason I mention this is because like if you look in your game here, right, in this position the queen's not really doing anything. When your opponent castles, we both think that bishop h6 is just a quick knockout. Right? Your pieces are able to transfer over there and just kill the king. The queen can't defend anything. She does nothing, right? You spend one tempo, the opponent's queen gets in, and now you don't have queen d2. You have to keep the c1 rook defended. Like, she's not actually defending any of these squares here. These are kind of your, like, target squares with really h7 and g, with really these three being primaries and this being just another square you could attack if black tried to block. She's not defending any of those squares, but just by getting in there with the white pieces, she like cuts out a lot of your options for going after the king. So anyway, that's sort of like a comparison point. I analyzed this like quite a while with a strong GM, and like queen b2 was much, much, much trickier than queen b6. And that's how like I see this. That queen coming from b6 to b2 is like night and day. Just like the king heading to the king side was night and day. Right? We look at the same position, and I said, well, you've got like, you know, maybe like a slightly pleasant, normal French kind of position. The moment your opponent castled king side, I was like, well, yeah, that doesn't go with these three moves, right? Now, bishop takes h6 should win the game. But you wait for one move, the queen gets in here, and again, my whole like advantage for you is like put in question. You know, maybe you still had an advantage, but I don't know what it is. You know, it's messy. And your advantage now might be like, you know, +1 or +1.3 with like 10 million impossible to find computer moves where you have to play both sides of the board and blah, blah, blah. Whereas like bishop takes h6 is something that a human can figure out in like 2 or 3 minutes, is good for white, and a computer is going to say like +4 or something, even though all you've done is taken a pawn, right? To just vomit on black's position. So I think that's a big like flip moment in the game for you and your opponent, right? The moment of your opponent castling and the moment of you not striking immediately and letting that queen get to b2. She provides a kind of defense by, you know, harassing or heckling your rear, even though she's not directly defending the squares that you're trying to attack. So, which is a thing in military strategy as well, right? That sometimes you can help defend something without actually being there, but by bothering the other troops from behind or from the sides, right? Without actually being in the place that they're trying to attack, you can sap their strength for attacking. Okay. That's our show for today / tonight. The thing is, I often do have like an hour free at night here after everybody goes to bed. But it's really tiring, like just being in that kind of like intense sun, which I'm not used to, and like running around and being physical with the kids all the time, you know, swimming in the ocean, all that. It really just takes everything out of me. And I need like another, I don't know, 10 glasses of water and like 2 meals or something to try and get my strength back or something. Ugh. So, yeah, it's an interesting game, Eric, and we did manage to learn something cool about it, even though I can't find the variations very quickly tonight. And no, Abyssional, I think I just don't have the strength today, so we'll see. Hawaii's cool. I mean, it's hot. It's great. it's like a lot of fun, which leaves me tired. The way like a chess tournament is a lot of fun, but also leaves you tired. So, yeah. I hope I'll have a couple more opportunities to pop on and do some streams from here. But at the moment, God, I'm just so tired all the time. 15 minutes and you thought you were gonna die. Yeah. If you've ever seen like, you know, the sort of like farcical world wrestling stuff, you know how they'll like climb up on tables and like jump down and like knee somebody, or like jump down with like a chair and hit them, or climb up to like the top of like a rope or a pole or something and jump on somebody. Like today my kid climbed up on top of my own head and used that to jump off of it and land on my privates, and it was just like, wow. Like, I'm getting killed here. So, yeah, it's just I'm pretty sapped right now. But yeah, it's fun to see you guys for a minute again, and yeah, hopefully I'll be able to pop on now and then from here, even though I'm not very energetic. Yeah. Alrighty. So, all good. Let's send a raid to Alessia. Rarely up at this time. Let's raid Italy. Oh, you're welcome, Helgilda. You're welcome. Yeah, of course I wasn't kidding, Far Eastern. There's some jokes in my content, but I also pretty much always mean what I say. That's fine with me, Eric. I'm happy to see it. I've played some Unsound stuff too. Alright. I'll see you guys soon then, yeah? Yeah, even 2 is too much, Far Eastern. It's going to overwhelm you. Yeah, I really meant 1. Alright. And I meant it when I said that you're not even going to find the right answer to that 1. But that it would be good practice to try. Alright. Cheers, everybody. Till next time. Sorry, Hardy. We're done for now, so we'll explain it next time around. Cheers.